So for those who might not know, every time you donate to our church, a percentage of every dollar is sent to help in crisis situations, whether they're at home here in the United States or whether they are overseas. If you've ever given $1, you have contributed to that mission globally. Ukraine is just one of the places where God is at work. God is trying to restore and help and offer hope to people. So I just want to take an opportunity to thank you again for those of you who continue to donate to our church so that we can continue to support those efforts. One of the really cool things about the Church of the Nazarene is anytime there is an international crisis, be it war, natural disaster, whatever, Nazarenes are always in the top 1% of responders. We are faster on the scene than 99% of other organizations, including things like the Red Cross, which is pretty crazy when you think about it, but part of the reason for that is all of our churches donate towards this infrastructure. We have warehouses full of these crisis care kits that we can then send to families in times of need. So don't be surprised if soon we are asking you to help us make more crisis care kits, because when we have a situation like this, it empties the warehouse. And then we need to fill it back up so that it's ready to go the next time there's another crisis. So just wanted to thank you again. And I'm not texting, I'm pulling out my notes, just for the record. So this is a very special morning. I want to go ahead and take this opportunity to release the children. You are released to go and unleash whatever havoc you feel like. Miss Cindy is ready for you guys. You're going to have a lot of fun. We have a very special service here today because we have a very special guest. Today we are privileged to welcome Steve Calloway, who is the mayor of the city of Hillsboro. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about Steve before I bring him up here and harass him a bit. Steve earned his bachelor's degree at Point Loma Nazarene University and completed his master's degree at Lewis and Clark College. He served as an Oregon City School District teacher for 11 years and as a vice principal in Bank School District for 5 years prior to becoming a principal in the Hillsboro School District. After serving multiple terms on the Hillsboro City Council, he was elected to the office of mayor in 2016 and re-elected in 2020. Steve has lived in Hillsboro since 1996 with his wife Joan. They have 2 children and 2 grandchildren, and I learned that Steve loves the Hillsboro Hops, the San Francisco Giants, Yellowstone National Park, and supporting the leaders, teachers, business owners, and friends of our city. So would you all please join me in welcoming our mayor, Steve Calloway. Let's make it official. Here's a microphone for you. You might want to make sure that it's on so they can hear your wonderful velvety voice.
Are we on?
No.
That's all right. Now I think we're on.
Yeah, there we go. All right.
Most importantly, I'm glad to know that I control the mute button and not you.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, no, trust me, I have one right here. I totally get it. Yeah. So we're going to take a little time and get to know you here at the start. Oh, he's come prepared.
Yes.
And so have I. So
you can tell the difference in generations. I'm pulling out the paper, and we have.
Yes. Actually, funny story. In case this crashes, I have a backup copy on paper too. So you grew up in north of Palermo, California, a town called Oroville. So if any one of us were to be driving through Oroville today, what is the one place you would say, you got to stop here, you got to check it out? This just tells us exactly what your upbringing was like.
I spent 4 years in Oroville. And those were my 4 high school years. So my dad was a Methodist minister, and so we lived in Bakersfield before that, and San Francisco before that. And so my 4 years in Oroville were, incredibly important years for me. But I would say that you probably would want to go visit the dam. It's the world's largest earth-filled dam, and that's also why I would recommend it, is because it's one of the few things I can remember, because I haven't been back to Oroville in probably 1975 to almost 50 years. And but I will tell you, the people there are just as genuine as can be. And the Nazarene Church in Oroville was transformational for me. So so that's why Oroville is so important to me.
Right.
But I would still say go visit the dam. It's pretty amazing.
Were you, so your dad was a Methodist minister,
Yeah.
but you were at Oroville Nazarene.
Yeah.
Were you cheating on your dad, like
No.
just not going to his church, or?
No. Because I still went to the Methodist church in the mornings, but then went to the Nazarene church in the evening, and the youth group at the Nazarene church.
We have good youth
was
groups.
Much stronger.
Yeah.
I think, the Nazarene denomination always put a stronger emphasis on the youth ministry than the Methodist churches, in which I grew up. And so that was where my peer group was.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're someone who really values education. I mean, you worked in education most of your life.
Yeah.
And college must have been a really pivotal time in your development and your ideas. So we were just hoping you could tell us a little bit about why you chose Point Loma and a little bit about your experience there.
Sure. So, I chose Point Loma because my friends from high school,
Peer pressure.
well, yeah, and peer pressure is not good or bad. It depends if you have good peers or bad peers. And I had really great peers. And I was not into partying. That just didn't interest me at all. And I had a strong faith. And where could I go where I felt like that was going to be supported, and I could just focus on, I guess, not that there weren't temptations, of course, at Point Loma, but there were fewer temptations maybe because of the values of the college, I guess is a good way to put it. And so really there was no other place that I wanted to go than Point Loma. And I will tell you that being immersed in a Christian environment was very important for me, because I could not have grown in the same ways with weekly Bible studies or say just navigators if I had been at a secular college and had participated in those things. To be fully immersed, chapel multiple times a week, to have professors that helped me understand things from a biblical perspective was just really important for me, and I think just really helped, with my calling, if you will, but also helped me understand my role and my place and my responsibilities.
Were you ever tempted to become a beach bum?
No. I don't like sand. And so, I love the ocean view, but
From the grass.
Yes. So, sand gets everywhere. So,
I'm an NNU alum, and we always made jokes that you go to Point Loma to be a beach bum.
yeah, I
So-
was just a bum.
Oh, okay.
So much the beach.
Okay, so you've held a variety of positions within the educational system, but also within government. And I imagine your college experience probably included waiting tables, stocking shelves, hauling lumber, something of that nature. So what would you say is the job you learned the most from before you became mayor?
So when I was in Point Loma, I was a security guard. I worked at Alpha Beta as a checker, and then a stocker, a checker, all of that. One who stocked the shelf.
I was about to say, you might want to follow that up.
One who put items on the shelf. Let's see, I'm trying to think I worked at a Winchell's Donuts, there on the corner of Rosecrans and Harbor Drive. I would say that probably one of the most impactful jobs I ever did was when I was in high school. And and there's no other way to say it or describe it other than you put your hands in what would generously be described as, big troughs of compost, okay? And within that compost would be worms. And you would pick up worms, put them in the small styrofoam cups, and then, and they were worms for fishing bait. And it was the most miserable day I ever had. And, the worms would get all, in a glob. And you're trying to get these worms out of their knot, right? And sometimes, they just come apart. Depending on, and it's like, I would just count that as 2. And
Yeah.
I remember going home at the end of the day, and I told my dad how much I hated it. And I kind of explained some of my strategies, filling up some of those little styrofoam cups. And he just said, Stephen, that's wrong. He said, when you have paid for X number of worms, and you are out there fishing, you expect to get that many worms. And you are cheating them of what they've paid for. You are cheating them of maybe some of their fishing experience. You're cheating the shopkeeper, and on and on. As I go, all that from worms that were being pulled
Yeah.
in. But, I think for me, and that's where my dad, lived an incredible life of integrity. And it was integrity in the little things make a difference in the big things. So I only did that job one day. I had that much integrity. I quit. Okay, I'm not doing this anymore. So, but, really the lesson from that one day, was very profound for me. But I would say, certainly as a principal, that has probably been the best training ground, for being a mayor. And, just because you have to work with people. And, and you cannot accomplish anything as a principal without everybody else.
Right.
And as such, everybody else deserves the credit. You own the responsibility when things don't turn out well. But when it does, it's because everybody else did such a good job. And one of the most important things you do as a principal, especially when you're dealing with kids, teachers, parents, whatnot, is you find that point of agreement. Because when we can find that point of agreement, we can work towards and solve any situation or any problem. And that would be the same thing in politics, is where is our point of agreement? Then is there a way that we can get there together from that point? Now sometimes it may be that the solution that we both believe is the best solution, is different, and that's fine. But at least we're working from a common point of agreement, at which point we realize we're on the same side. We both want what's best, or we both want a solution to this, or we both want, to find, help, for that.
Right, right. By the way, anybody who's a leader, that was a really great comment. I just want to support on Leadership 101. When everything goes bad, you take the responsibility. When everything goes well, you give credit to the people you work with. That is absolutely how leadership should go. So I just want to commend you for that. I love hearing that. Also, now I'm wondering about, those really lame team building exercises they make you do where they give you a big old knot of ropes and make you work together to untangle them?
Yeah.
I think maybe we should try worms.
Try worms, yeah. You'll get it unknotted a whole lot faster.
And you'll have twice as many worms as you started with. Yeah. So what would you say are the highs and lows of being mayor?
First of all, there are far more highs, than there are lows. I think, Hillsboro is a wonderful city. And, it is about twice the size that it was when we moved here in the mid-90s. And I remember when my son, Michael, who's now 32, was probably 3rd or 4th grade. And he said to me, you know what, Dad, Hillsboro's a great place to be a kid. And normally you have to reach adulthood and you look back on where you grew up. And then you say, oh, my hometown, that was a great place to be a kid. And I realized that the reason it was a great place and it was so evident to him was because of the work and the service that so many others had done in previous generations. And I think that was one of those things that helped motivate me, if you will, to continue to volunteer, but also then look towards, elected office. My mom and dad both said, leave the world a better place than when you entered. And, and there are those who argue as soon as I leave the world, it will be a better place. That's easy, check that off. And, so I think for those of us, who have been given much will be expected.
Yeah.
We've been given a great city. And, and we are the most diverse large city in our state.
Yeah.
And what a privilege, that is for us. And, the diversity of ethnicity, the diversity of faiths, the diversity of culture, the diversity of experiences. That's all right here. And we don't have to go anywhere to be able to support it, to be able to be a part of it, to be able to enjoy it and contribute to it. So far, far more highs than lows. And I think, sometimes the lows, come as they do in any of our roles, whether it's as a parent, as a teacher, principal, is when some of the circumstances or the problems just seem so big. And you feel accountable and responsible for things that you don't have full control over.
Right.
And so those are probably some of the lows. But I will tell you, there have been times, when I've knocked on doors for candidates and somebody says, what, we've never met, but I pray for you every day.
Wow.
I was like, wow, that's right. Or just the person.
Did they pray for you or because of you?
Both, who can. And I think, there are times that somebody will just stop and say, you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Thank you. And, those are the things that make a lot of difference.
Right.
So.
Well, and I can attest, so I grew up in Hillsboro, and I've lived all over. I've lived in Ohio, New York, Oregon, Idaho, Wisconsin, Illinois, Kansas, and Missouri. And I keep coming back here. Mm-hmm. This is the church I grew up in. This is the city I grew up in. And I can echo what your son said. This was a great place to be a kid. And a lot of things you talk about, like the diversity, that's something I really appreciate. And I did not understand what a gift it was until I left. Mm-hmm. Because then I went to Idaho. And my first week at university at NNU, I remember just coming back to the dorm, and one of my buddies was from Oak Ridge, Oregon. And we're in the same room, and he just goes, man, can you believe all the Latinos that are here? And I said, yeah, I went to Walmart. I think I saw 2 today. He goes, I know, 2! Like, for him, Nampa was dramatically diverse, and I was feeling like I was in a sea of yogurt. Like, I did not know. I was like, I don't think anyone's going to speak Spanish to me, and I'm going to get the itch. Like.
Now, you said you felt like you were in a sea of yogurt. For those of us that went to Point Loma, that would have been the only culture that was in Napa.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. So we are getting a little tired of the dreary weather. Summer's on the horizon, and there's a lot of fun stuff to do in Hillsboro. Is there anything you would point us to and say, man, if you got a Saturday off, you need to go do this?
Well, I would say if you have a Thursday night off, go to the Showtime at Shoot, because they have concerts. And they also have them now over at Amberglen Park 2, so they kind of go back and forth. We have a magnificent, wonderful 4th of July parade, and it was...
We've been a part of that.
Yes, you have.
Yes.
It was so good.
Yeah.
We didn't have it for a couple of years due to COVID-19, and so, we had it last year, and that was so wonderful to be back together again. Our farmers markets are great, and, just being out and about, being in the front yard instead of the backyard.
Yeah.
Good thing.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so I did do a little snooping, and I found I found your Twitter, and so I decided to pick through it and find a couple fun tweets, and I thought we could talk about them.
Oh, that's a waste of your time.
Yeah. Can we get the first one put up on the screen, please? Glad I didn't give up playing in the snow for Lent.
Yes, that's correct. Because, right after Ash Wednesday, we had like snow Thursday and Friday. And, just totally out of, for me, totally out of the blue or out of the dreary.
Right.
I had not expected that. And so, it's good to get back out into the snow.
So, have you ever done a Lenten fast?
I have, yes.
What was the most memorable one you did?
When I was in college, I gave up some sleep and got up a half an hour earlier.
Oh, I thought you were going to say I was in college and I gave up some
And
sleep. That's not a fast, that's
studying.
college.
Yeah. In order to, so I gave up a little bit less, I gave a little bit of sleep time in order to get up earlier to pray and study.
Yeah.
So, and that was one that was probably much more meaningful than giving up chocolate or giving up other things. And that was a very special Lenten season for me.
That was something that we talked about here, that Lent doesn't always mean giving something up. Sometimes it means taking something on.
Right.
And so taking on a spiritual discipline that wasn't normally happening could actually be very impactful.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I think we got one more. The other one's missing? There it is. This was my favorite as I was going through. Watching the Hillsboro Hops versus the Eugene Emeralds on MILB TV with sound off and closed caption on. EM's center fielder Matos was called Mottos, My Toast, Autos, My Toes. I'm suddenly nervous about the next batter whose last name is Schmidt.
And that is absolutely true. So, I grew up with baseball in the background, always a radio broadcast, when you're working out in the yard or whatever. And so, I still, love listening to the radio and watching, the TV. And so we follow our hops when they're on the road. And so we have the closed captioning on, and that is absolutely true.
That's funny.
Yes.
So the Hops are celebrating their 10-year anniversary this year.
Yeah.
So do you have you're obviously a big fan. Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite Hops memory? Something, whether it was a big play or just a really touching moment or something funny?
Yes, I have a lot of them. I would have to say, where we sit, the dugout is right to our right. And so we see the guys as they come off the field. And, baseball, and I guess the reason I love baseball is it's a game of failure, okay? and I can relate to that. If you fail 7 out of 10 times as a batter, you're still hitting 300.
Yeah.
And you can make it into the Hall of Fame with that.
Yeah.
And,
Does the same rule apply to teaching?
I never hit 300 as a teacher.
I was just going to say, 10 kids come into the class, only 7 leave it. You still make it in the Hall of Fame for that?
No.
Probably not.
Yeah. You make it in the principal's office.
Yeah.
And as a pitcher, you give up walks, you give up hits, how many perfect games have there been, right? So nobody goes into a baseball game thinking you're going to throw a perfect pitch or a perfect game. Nobody goes in thinking they're never going to strike out. So what I love, and especially with the Hops, for the majority of their years, they've been low A. So for a lot of these kids, it's their very first professional experience. And they come out of college having been drafted, high draft picks, and now they come and they're struggling. And so to see them come off the field and they are dejected, and then to see some of the reassurance that is given to them by coaches, or by teammates, those are some of the most special moments, is just seeing how they treat each other in the dugout. Joan and I have hosted Hops players and coaches and, fiancés over the years. And, it has been really, really special for us. I think we've been to probably 5 weddings, from Florida, South Carolina, Colorado, California, Illinois. We have, kept in touch with so many of them. One, he and his wife are now on staff with Navigators at
cool.
in Illinois, and we support them every month. And, so really it's the relationships that we have even beyond the field that have made it so incredibly special. And so there's just no better place to spend, a summer evening than at a Hillsboro Hops game. Yeah.
I also heard you got to throw the first pitch at a game, but it wasn't your first pitch. You cheated.
Keep going.
Which time? I was looking at your Twitter and I saw that you said, here's the real first pitch, where you were practicing in an empty stadium to get ready to throw it because you didn't want to be one of those ones that it gets halfway there and then bounces and rolls to the catcher.
Never bounce the pitch.
Yeah.
And it was this last,
you got to posture yourself as a strong leader.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this last year, I threw out a first pitch, and I usually do it, once a year. And I asked their manager, Vince Harrison, just a wonderful, wonderful guy, if he would catch the pitch, because normally whoever catches it is some player who's not playing. And I just have enjoyed Vince a lot. And so he said, oh, gee, I haven't squatted down in years. I said, don't worry, I'll just kind of lob it in, and you don't have to. And so right before I threw the pitch, he got down into a catcher's crouch. I was like, oh man, now I really have to throw it, because you can't just lob it in when a guy is standing, but it went okay.
Did you hear his knees crack from the mound?
I know. So, but no, and I think what I appreciate too about the Hops is they are a really wonderful organization for the community. They give back in a number of ways, and a lot of times it feels like a baseball team or any sports organization
is taking. Yeah.
Yes. And they have donated back. I mean, I can't think of a single school or community auction they haven't donated to, or causes that they have not supported. Last year, there's an initiative with Major League Baseball called Play Ball. And so they ask cities, especially cities with minor league ball clubs, to host a play ball event where kids, can get out there, catch the ball, and get some coaching. And last year, the Hops did 5 all simultaneously in different areas around the metro area. And, little old Hillsboro, there were more done by our club than any other city around the nation.
Wow.
120 other minor league clubs, plus all the other cities where these took place. So
that's very cool.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
And today, we've been working on a series here at the church about what a disciple is. And specifically during Lent, we're talking about what it means to be tested. And so today we're talking about what it means, in our first meeting, the word I walked away with and I just couldn't let go of was, you talked so much about kindness and how important kindness is. So today we're talking about how a disciple is kind. Now, historically, in our nation, religion and government have experienced both partnership and rivalry, mutual support and tension. So in your experience, how have faith and politics worked together for our community and for our leadership?
I would say that my faith has been a part of everything I've done. And, and at school, for instance, public schools, secular schools, yet there are so many, people who are a part of our schools who are people of faith.
Right.
And we don't leave our faith at the door. If anything, that faith manifests itself in how we treat people. Okay. For me, as a principal, I always used to say that the root word, so I was an administrator. And I used to say the root word of administer is to minister. And that means I minister to the needs of my staff, to the kids, and to the families. And that doesn't mean I'm, proselytizing, if you will, but it means I am putting into action and into, words those beliefs that I carry with me every single day. And, because Jesus preached, but he also acted. Right. And, and I think and so that's what I've tried to do, is act out, the words that I've commanded.
Yeah, and I mean, in the letter to James, it says that show me your faith without deeds, and I'll show you my faith by what I do. So, I mean, I think that really commiserates.
And so politically, we are commanded to love people.
Right.
And so you find how, so you do that.
In politics, that has to be hard.
Well,
they don't make it easy on you. Let me put it that way.
Some people don't.
Yeah.
But I would also say there are times, Joan and I have been married almost 38 years. And I'm not always easily lovable. So,
marriage is discipleship.
Politics,
yeah.
So, but I think if loving people were easy, we'd all be able to do it.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
There's a reason why God has me cutting in front of you accidentally on the road to teach you patience, right?
That was you? Like.
On that day, probably. But I also think, that religion, Christianity is based on absolutes. Okay, good politics is based on compromise. Okay, so the thing is, you aren't going to compromise your core beliefs. beliefs.
Right.
Okay, but you know, in order to compromise to come to good solutions, that's okay. You know, and I think what's happened is that we confuse compromise, or you know, if you will, with weakness. Well, we're not compromising.
Or surrender.
Yeah, we're not compromising our absolute core beliefs.
Right.
You know, we're just finding a way that we can get together, find a way to put our core beliefs, you know, towards a solution. If
Right.
that makes sense. And there may be some things that, well, sorry, that's just a line in the, you know, a line that I can't cross.
Right.
And that's fine.
Right.
But I think, you know, there's far more, we can accomplish far more, you know, by listening, understanding, compromising, and working together.
Right. So when we talked previously, you talked about how the most important thing any church in Hillsboro can do, if any one of us wants to know how to be a good disciple, number one thing is be kind. So could you define kindness for me and talk a little bit about what maybe that looks like for people here today, people in our church?
So, you know, I think of kindness as both something you plan to do as well as spontaneous. And, you know, and I think my understanding of kindness really comes from the fruits of the Spirit. Okay, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and
self-control.
And self-control.
Yeah.
Yep. And you know, and I remember when I was young, and reading those 8, 9, reading the fruits of the Spirit. I think they're 9. 9. Okay, inflation. 9. And you know, but I just remember thinking, I can't do 9 of these.
Yeah.
But I realized, you know what?
Sounds like you lack self-control.
If I do one of them, if I do one of them, I can't help then but be doing the other ones too. Because if I'm practicing kindness, then you know what? I am exerting a little bit more self-control.
Right.
I am showing more patience and gentleness. You know.
Definitely.
You know, and so that was the amazing thing, that I don't have to do all 9 of them. If I can do one, then I can begin to accomplish all of them. And I think that's, so what does kindness look like? Kindness, you know, I think of as a spontaneous, but also as a thoughtful act, one that you plan to do. But kindness looks like love, patience, joy, self-control, gentleness. And I think in that way, it's not that hard to be kind. You know, it's a lofty goal, but it's not unachievable.
Right.
And I think that is one of the things, you know, Hillsboro is a kind community. You know, we support each other, and I am continually impressed by that.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a church, Valley West, that has something called Resolution Kindness. And they define kindness, and their mission is to have people, this is their definition of kindness: smile, listen, encourage, help, and say thank you. And yeah, those
That's
are all
very
pretty simple
specific,
things,
yeah.
yes. And just imagine if, you know, if we walked around Hillsboro and we saw more smiles, and we heard more thank yous, and we saw more offers of help, that'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, and you've touched on it, but that's a great answer individually. Let's talk about it on an entire organization scale. What might be some things that our church, if we wanted to rally together to try and do some things to the community, that we could do? And what might be sometimes churches have well-meaning initiatives that maybe not just don't take, but maybe they do some damage, more damage than they intend. What might we want to avoid?
So sometimes we offer a solution in search of a problem.
Yeah,
okay? And so make sure that you are meeting a need, okay? And don't say we want to do this, but it's more, what can we do for you, okay?
Yeah.
The other thing is follow through. At my last school, we had a church that offered to basically take a couple of families under their wing and just support them for the year. And there wasn't the follow through. And so a refrigerator that was promised didn't come. Christmas gifts that were promised didn't come. And all of a sudden then, you know, they're looking back to me in the school who had said, we have this for you, we want to help you and support you, and then it doesn't come, and then I own that. And so I would rather you don't do anything than not follow through.
Right.
And I think sometimes be willing to do little things, because it's those, we're all willing to do big things, visible things, glorious things, but sometimes it's those little things that make all the difference. And when you add lots of little things together, especially in God's name, they add up to great things.
Right.
They really add up to, they add up to a good representation of who God is as a merciful, loving, gracious Father. And so I would say, and be present. There's that saying that you can pretend to care, but you can't pretend to show up.
Yeah.
And so, and God shows up. Jesus showed up. They just didn't pretend to care. And so, that's our example. So,
Right.
Show up. And I think then when we are present, we can kind of understand, how we can serve, as opposed to just showing up on a white horse like the cavalry, thinking that we know we have the solution for your problems.
Right. I sometimes tell, my mom is a nurse, and so she had, I don't know if I stole this parable from her or if I just made it up thinking of her, but I always think about the parable of the two doctors, where you go to the emergency room, one doctor comes in, doesn't say a word to you, writes a prescription, tosses it on the table, and leaves. Then a second doctor comes in, asks you how you're doing, runs diagnostic tests, goes and gets the results, comes back, explains them to you, writes a prescription, schedules a follow-up. Whose prescription are you going to fill? It's not even a question. And too many churches go around trying to prescribe without ever getting to know where the problem might lie. I do want to take this opportunity to give a plug. We have had an ongoing relationship with Newberry Elementary, which is a Title I school, for a number of years. First of all, thank you for following through. We have a reputation at that school for showing up and helping out, and I want to thank you for that. As we are coming to the end of this school year, and we are going to be coming to the beginning of a new school year in the fall, we are going to be ramping up our donations for the food pantry. And so I just want to encourage you, if that's something you haven't been a part of in a while, be a part of it, and we're going to have some other opportunities coming up to serve some of the kids in our community, to try and show a little kindness.
And I saw somebody walking in this morning with a bag of groceries.
Yeah, I'd shout their name, but then I'd steal their blessing, so. But you know who you are. We're planning, we got this idea, we got this cockamamie idea, tell me what you think. We're planning on Labor Day weekend to try something a little bit different. In the past, we have done a family camp together. We're thinking about trying to do a block party for our community this year. Got any advice for us?
Invite me.
Okay. You will be more than welcome.
Oh, good, thank you. No, I would say publicize it well.
Okay.
Okay. Because there is, to a certain degree, some distrust or mistrust, misunderstandings of churches. And I think, so publicizing it early, helps.
Right.
And I would say, even going around and knocking on doors and saying, we invite you, as opposed to a passive,
sticking a letter on their door or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, growing up, there was, there's the song that we used to sing, they'll know we're Christians by our love.
Yeah.
And I think maybe this summer, there are things you can do in the neighborhoods. And I think of older folks, who cannot rake their leaves,
right,
who cannot mow their lawn, or things like that. And maybe there are some ways that you can, let people know the hearts that are here, the servants that are here, the love that is here for the area, for the neighborhood. And even find out, okay, is there a way to support Newberry families during June, July, and August?
Sure.
And you might already be doing that.
We're starting. Yeah.
Thank you. And so that's another way, because there's some of your there's some of your folks right there.
Right.
Have them come on over.
Right.
And let them know then the faces and the hearts behind the support that they've been receiving.
Right.
Because the thank yous that you receive, those warm us
Yeah.
and motivate us and inspire us unbelievably.
If you are going to mow someone's lawn, ask them first. Because if you don't, sometimes a well-meaning effort turns into a trespassing arrest. So just side note. But yeah, no, I love that.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to relationship, I think.
You know, earlier this year, well, the city sends out what's called City Views newsletter a couple of times a month. And we had an article in there about some money that was available to help, senior citizens, low income, if there were some issues with their house. And so we received the most wonderful thank you letter from a gentleman who's over here, I want to say on Catherine, I think it is. He had been in his house for years. He's a veteran, older man, limited income, and his roof was leaking. And so, the city had money then that we could give to him for that. And he got a new roof, and he just wrote us the most heartfelt thank you, where you could tell that before there had been a little bit of desperation.
Mm-hmm.
And now he can stay independent on his own because his house is going to keep him dry and warm. And I thought, I've driven by that guy's house a lot of times as I've gone from, Jackson School over towards the park or towards Intel. And I'll be darned, who would have known? Now, you could have looked at the moss-covered roof, and that could have been a good clue for me, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes are there things on the outer, that outside that might give you an indication that
Right.
maybe somebody in there could use a little love or help.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just, maybe pointing and helping to connect from the need to filling that need, and you don't even have to be the one to do it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of folks, they want to fill needs, but they're almost scared to walk up and knock on the door because they don't want to be seen as someone who's just coming like to proselytize and say, hey, I'll do this for you if you join our, or just flat out rejection, someone being offended, walking up, I was wondering if you need any help. No, why do you think I need help? How would you kind of respond to people's reticence to go up and just try to build that relationship and break that ground? Because it's a careful balance.
It is, and I think you build trust, you build relationships drip by drip.
Mm.
We lose it by the bucketful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the craziest thing is, when we would go camping, when our kids were younger and would camp, and in 20 minutes we would know the people on both sides of our campsite far better than the people that have lived on both sides of us in our neighborhood. And so, sometimes it's just taking that first step.
Well, if they're crazy, then you get to go home at the end of the weekend.
Usually we were
You were the crazy ones?
But, I think sometimes it's just that initial outreach.
Yeah.
Hi, how you doing? How's your day?
Yeah.
And during the pandemic, we, on our street, 7 o'clock in the evenings, a lot of people just sat on their driveways, and they had their fires in pits.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And it was really, it was wonderful because that brought people together and created some relationships that now have transcended, all the lifting of the restrictions.
Right.
And so you still see, the kids and they're playing, but now the names of those kids that are playing in the street.
Yeah.
It's just really good in that way. So, how do you create some of those relationships? I would say over time and bit by bit. And then if you're going to offer help, just make sure that you know where you can go to provide that,
Mm-hmm.
to meet that need. So it could be a need that is far bigger than,
Right.
I can mow a lawn, I can't repair your lawnmower. So is there somebody that I might know or, who could, or are there resources that would help, to pay for the fixing of that
Right.
lawnmower, for instance?
Right.
Or again, food or those kinds
Sure.
of things, whatever it might be.
Sure.
And in some ways, somebody asked me during the pandemic, how did the city, create relationships, with, partners.
Right.
And I said, we didn't. We just leaned into those partnerships that we had. So community action, which the city partners with for rent assistance, food assistance, energy, assistance. We just really leaned into them for that. And so, sorry, is that my hum? Or is that just an indicator that I've talked too long?
I don't know. It happens to me about the same time every week. I think it's unrelated.
But,
No.
But we really leaned into those existing partnerships. And so
Right.
I think we didn't try to do what we couldn't or weren't set up to do. So if we can, again, I may not be set up to do certain things, but I can sure help be a connector. I can help connect to where food is available. I can help connect to where resources are available.
Right.
Or depending on the need, I can.
You might be able to meet it yourself.
I might be able to.
Yeah.
Or I might be able to call some other friends to do it, and together,
So any final words of advice, encouragement, anything that's coming up on the horizon that we want to make sure we don't miss out on, besides the, 10th anniversary hop season?
Yeah, Hillsboro is your city, and so enjoy it, love it, be involved in it. We are not a perfect city, just like there's no such thing as a perfect church. And if you ever find one, don't join it.
Because then it won't be perfect anymore. Yeah.
And I would say it's okay to be critical, but a critical spirit is not the same thing. And, hold us accountable as elected officials because we are here for you and work for you. And if you want to, I'll give you my cell phone. You can write it down. I may not answer it if I don't recognize it.
Careful, we're recording.
On one of my campaign pieces of literature that went out to 20,000 households, 7 years ago, I had my cell phone. I got one text and one wrong number, so, and all the years that I was a principal, my phone number was out there, and everybody tends to be pretty respectful.
That's good.
And those who aren't, I have caller ID.
Yeah.
So, but.
They only get you once.
Yeah, 503-475, and Ryan has it, can share it with you, 0967, so 503-475-0967. Feel free to text, feel free to call, because I'm always happy, always happy to engage. But I just want to say thank you for your faithfulness to your church, to your community, to your God, to serving. Thank you for your kindness, and thank you for making a difference. You enrich all of our lives, and I will tell you especially mine, so thank you.
Friends, this is our mayor. Would you please show him some love? Thank you, sir. Oh, well, I got it. So as we are wrapping up today, we thought it would be appropriate if we just, since we are talking about being kind to our community, we remember our Lord's kindness to us and what brings us together, which is Jesus Christ. So, on the night that Jesus was betrayed, he gathered his disciples together, which says a lot. This was Jesus' last day. You've heard people ask the question, if it was your last day on earth, what would you do? Jesus decided to have dinner with his friends. He decided to celebrate Passover. And as they came together, he took some common elements from that table, and he filled them full of new meaning. He said that the bread was his body, that it would be broken for us, that this cup was his blood, which would be spilled for us. And as he offered these elements, he offered his disciples a few last words of advice. One of the big things he said, one of the things that he really focused in on was love one another. They will know us by our love. Jesus said that the single greatest evidence the world would have that he came, he lived, he died, he was raised from the dead. The best evidence the world would have is the incredible love they would see among his disciples for one another. our kindness. And so, as we take communion today, we're going to pause for a few moments to check our hearts. Scripture says you don't want to take communion in an unworthy manner, so we always check our hearts before we receive communion. And there might be something that the Lord draws to your attention, says, this was a moment you really needed to be kind, and you didn't quite make it. And in those moments, if you feel convicted, ask God to forgive you. Be ready to go make it right. But we're going to take a few moments. We're going to search our hearts, and we're going to see if there's anything God wants to talk to us about to make sure that we are ready before we come to the Lord's table to remember his covenant and what he did for us. In the Church of the Nazarene, we only have one rule about communion. There are other churches where if you go, I still find it interesting that in the Greek Orthodox Church, unless you're Greek Orthodox, you're not even allowed to be in the room when communion is received. It's very limited. In the Church of the Nazarene, we practice a much more open table. We believe that if you're following Jesus, if you love him, if you've given your heart to him, then this is for you. If you haven't, it's not for you yet. But what a wonderful day today would be to say yes to Jesus, to start your relationship with him, and to follow him for the rest of your life. So take a few moments, check your hearts, pray to the Lord, see if there's anything he wants to talk to you about before we receive communion together. And I'd like to welcome our ushers forward as we distribute the elements.